of lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We're going to chat with him about some of the teams that are outside the top 3, which those are Michigan, Arizona, and Duke, that have a chance to be able to knock off one of those top 3 teams, that have a chance to be able to make a run to a Final Four. We're going to be taking a look at the landscape that we've got out there in the Big Ten, as well as we did this prior to the Michigan State versus Purdue game, which obviously that one was rambunctious, and we're going to be taking a look at some games for Friday and just the dynamic of some of these mid-major conferences this time of year as well in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, the mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Do get in a Twitter/X question today from Kevin at MizKD19. He was asking me about just some of the things I use with regards to my handicapping. Is there a certain amount of time that I commit per game? Are there times where I handicap a little bit forward? Things of this nature, just really the process of what goes into handicapping. And for those that know me, you know that I am very much a guy that believes in this saying, that every game is its own living, breathing entity. There are some games that it only takes me a few seconds to handicap them. I have my number in mind. There are other games where I need to dig in quite a bit further. Take a look at perhaps that first matchup. If you have a little bit of a rematch, take a look at the scheduling spot, what have you. So every game is a little bit different. That said, I do my handicapping for a lot of cases about 5 to 6 days in advance. Now, obviously, if there's a game that I'm handicapping for Saturday and I'm doing that handicap on Monday, if they're playing on Wednesday, I will take into account that Wednesday result. If there's something that I see that I like/don't like, I'll make a little bit of an adjustment there. So it's not like I make the number 5 or 6 days in advance. It's like, oh, I can't move off of it. Like when Texas Tech lost JT Toppin for the year, obviously a correction needs to be made on Texas Tech without JT Toppin. So there are always those sorts of situations, but I do this because I don't want to be influenced by any sort of outside, shall we say, entities, whether that be bookmakers putting out their openers. And I mean, I have a ton of respect for people like Bart Torvik, along with Ken Pomeroy, Eric Haslam of Haslametrics, Evan Miyakawa, all those great statisticians. I want my numbers to be my numbers, though. I really want to be trying to just not have outside influence from those other folks that do a great job in terms of putting out their projections on all these games as well. So I try to keep everything my own as well. So that's a big reason why I do a handicap a little bit in advance. And I always want to have a number in mind for when I'm trying to bet openers myself. So that's a big reason for it. And there's no real one criteria in terms of my handicapping as well. Do I have numbers in mind in terms of where I think a team is ranked in the country? Yes, I do, but those are very, very fluid as well, and you have to take into account the scheduling spot, and I'm a big believer in the old boxing mantra as well, of matchups make fights. Like, we're going to have a game involving South Alabama here on Friday. South Alabama in their home games, they force opponents to take over 67% of their field goal attempts from 3-point range. Guess what becomes very important in terms of that handicap? How the other team shoots from 3-point range. If they were forcing teams to take 80% of their shots from 2-point range, I'd be looking much more at the 2-point shooting percentage numbers. If you have a team that fouls a ton, you have to take into account free throw shooting percentage much more than if a team doesn't foul a ton as well. So it's taking a look at the styles, it's taking a look at the tempos as well. Like for free throw shooting percentage, it becomes much more important if the spread is like 5, where if a team is down 5, they're probably going to be fouling a ton. If the spread is 25, well, you're probably not going to be getting late fouls if the team is down 22 points. So it all depends upon the situation for me, and that's why I give my breakdowns every single day. It explains exactly how I came to the handicap that I did. I don't just put out numbers on a spreadsheet and say, oh, it is what it is. That's the reason why I give that here on the podcast here, and that's the biggest reason why this podcast does exist. So hopefully you appreciate that. Again, it's a very much a situational sort of process, but it's one that I go through every single day. I do think that's very important to be going through, and if you are someone that follows me on the old Twitter/X at @GUnit_81, and you do do take a look at my pinned tweet every single day, you'll notice I post a VSiN link up there that has my handicaps for the next 5 to 6 days as well. And you can actually see in real time when I'm putting up my handicaps for like a few days in advance at like 2, 3 a.m. I actually update those live as well. So that's a helpful resource. So if you're looking for handicaps for like next week's early games that we already know, because there are a few unknown games with the conference tournaments, I already have those handicapped on that link. So hopefully that answers your questions, and I do appreciate the question. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in college basketball on Thursday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the Rowdy recap.
There was really only one game that involved ranked teams on Thursday, and boy, oh boy, was it a good one. Michigan State, who has been one of the best under teams in all of college basketball, they get the job done and they get the win over Purdue. This by a count of 76-74. Purdue takes an early lead. They were up 39-36 at the half, but for Purdue, despite going 12 of 25 from 3, they lose this game at the free throw line and with the turnovers. 6 of 9 at the free throw line. They have 9 turnovers. Michigan State, they had just 6, and for Michigan State, they also lose the rebound battle, 27-25, but they had Carson Cooper on their side. 15 points, 6 rebounds for Purdue. Fletcher Lawyer, just 8 points in this game. He did have 4 assists, and Braden Smith, 10 assists, 12 points, but Michigan State does a nice job inside. They find a way to get the job done, and for Michigan State, now 12 overs to 16 unders thus far this season. Your worst against a spread team in all of college basketball was in action on Thursdays. We had a lot of teams that were trendy, both to the positive and to the negative. And for UMKC, they are now 5-21 against the spread. They were a double-figure underdog against South Dakota State. They do not cover this game as South Dakota State. They go on the road. They win by a count of 73-59. A lot of places had this line closer to about 10.5, 11.5. South Dakota State, they go 8 of 19 from three-point range. And for Kansas City, actually an above-average three-point shooting night out of them, 10 of 28 from 3, but they lose the rebound battle 47-25. That's supposed to be typically what Kansas City does a relatively solid job of, and they do not cover this game. So congratulations to them, now being 5-21 against the spread thus far this season. Your next worst team against the spread in all of college basketball, that'd be Florida Gulf Coast, 7-20-1 against the spread. They lose outright as a favorite to North Florida, 76-70. I know that one of our good friends, Adam Trigger, was in attendance for this one, and he witnessed a lot of brick threes. 6 of 27 from three-point range for Florida Gulf Coast, 9 of 32 for the mighty Osprey in North Florida, who have been getting lambasted on glass this year, but they actually win the rebound battle 42-39, and Cameron Oriole, he was able to chip in there 26 points. So for North Florida, they do find a way to persevere, get the job done. VMI, they've been a rough cover team as well at 8-19 against the spread, but a relatively spirited effort here against Samford early, just to have it go into the abyss late. 80-61 the final. Things were tied up 36-36 at the half. This was a closing spread of about 17.5, so they continued their not so great ways. 7 of 31 from three-point range for VMI, 12 of 31 for Samford, and Dylan Faulkner for Samford. He was able to throw in their 21 big points, so they continue to have a very rough go of it against the spread. Texas Southern, they have been 8-17 against the spread this season. Typically, you don't see a lot of swaction on Thursdays, but that said, we did have some on this Thursday, and for Texas Southern, they needed overtime to be able to get the job done. 92-87, they take down Alcorn State. This was a spread of 5.5, so they come close but no cigar to covering this one, as things do explode late. As for Texas Southern, they go 19-24 at the free throw line. They do win the rebound battle by a count of 42-38. Typically, you don't see this very often, but for Texas Southern, their starters, because it was senior night, they had from their starters a combined 17 points, and they had off the bench, if math serves me correct, 75 points. So that was a wild and crazy game, to say the least. Meep, the Cal State Bakersfield Roadrunners have won 8-17-1 against the spread, and if you had the under in this game between they and UC San Diego, boy, was that rough. 84-72 the final, because for the Roadrunners, they were fouling down 4 possessions with 15 seconds remaining. They had a pathetic three-point shooting expose. They go 3 of 21 from the outside. They lose a rebound battle 37-26. They lose the turnover battle 13-12, but they did make a few inside shots. And for UC San Diego, you had Hudson Mason lead the way. He had 21 points in this game. This was a closing spread in a lot of places of 14.5. So Bakersfield was able to cover that one, but nevertheless, it has been a relatively rough season for them, to say the least. If you're looking at more of the good in college basketball, Miami of Ohio is actually your best cover team. They're 19-6 against the spread. Matching them on Thursday, though, out there in Conference USA, it is Miley Cyrus's favorite conference because it's a party in Conference USA. Sam Houston, 100-67. They lambasted Florida International. For Florida International, well, they went international with their three-point shooting, and it didn't go well. 3 of 18 from three-point range. Sam Houston, 10 of 16 from three-point range. Sam Houston wins the rebound battle, 40-24, 20 big points. Jacob Walker in this one, and Boy King, one of the best teams in all of college basketball. He had 18 points, so now both they and Miami of Ohio lead the way at 19-6 against the spread this season. Portland State has been a moneymaker for you as well, 16-7-1 against the spread, but they weren't able to make you some money on Thursday as they go on the road and they get walloped by Montana State, 84-69. The final as Montana State, 15 out of 30 from three. Seth Amenrud, hopefully I got that correct. He came off the bench. He had 22 points. He went 6 of 8 from three-point range. Jed Miller, well, he was Jackson on this one, 4 of 8 from three-point range, 9 boards, 25 points, 6 assists. So that was rock solid for Portland State. They do lose the turnover battle, 15-11. They actually go 9 of 18 from three-point range themselves, but the turnovers, they were very, very costly in this one, so they are unable to cover that spread. Another team has been able to cover a lot of spreads and make you a whole bunch of money has been Mercier. Says the Lakers, they go on the road, they don't get the job done outright against Central Connecticut, 80-78, but this was a closing spread in a lot of places, right around about 3.5. The opener was 2.5, so whether you took it early or late, you were able to get there with Mercier, so they go just 4 of 17 from three-point range for Central Connecticut. They won the rebound battle 30-28, but Mercier's wins that turnover battle by kind of 9-7, and on their side, they had a guy in Kadir Martin who was able to supply 18 points, 5 boards, pair of steals. So Mercier's, they're able to cover that one. They're now overall for the season checking in at 18-10 against the spread, so they've been able to do a solid job on that front. If you're looking at some of your top over and under teams in all of college basketball, Denver has been that creme de la creme over team thus far this season. 20 over, 7 unders, and a push, and things have been a little bit more rocky on the totals for them here over the last few weeks, but they were certainly able to get you the over in this game because they gave up 102 points to Oral Roberts, so it's not been good thus far this season. 102-80 final in this one. Oral Roberts, they go 9 of 21 from three-point range, 35 out of 39 at the free throw line. You know, only one Pioneer fell out in this game, but they had 25 fouls. They give up 39 free throws, and for Oral Roberts, they win the rebound battle 43-26. So a nice, easy over out there. UNC Greensboro has been a really good over team as well. 20 overs to 8 unders for them. They take it to Chattanooga, 85-80 the final, so easily got the over, despite the fact that he had a lot of brick for threes in this one. Greensboro, 9 of 27 from 3, 12 of 38 for Chattanooga, but for Greensboro, they go 20 of 25 at the free throw line. They do a nice job in terms of being able to pound the ball inside. Justin Neely, another double-double, 18 points, 17 rebounds, and Greensboro has been a really sorry against the spread team as far this season. Starting to cover a few numbers as well, so they get you there. St. Bonaventure, they were supposed to be playing on Wednesday. They had their game against Rhode Island pushed back to Thursday. They cashed you another over. They're now up to 18 overs and 9 unders as far this season, and they take it to Rhode Island, 94-76 the final. As for the Bonnies, 10 of 22 from three-point range. They win the rebound battle, 34-26. Frank Mitchell, another ho-hum double-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds, so they do their job there. New Mexico State has also been a really good over team as they just got completely pounded on Thursday, not the effort that they were looking for, as Conference USA had some very interesting results on Thursday, by the way, but that said, Western Kentucky, 93-70 winners over them, as Western Kentucky, 11 of 25 from 3. Western Kentucky actually loses a rebound battle, 42-40, but for New Mexico State, 5 of 30 from three-point range, but they did more than enough to be able to get you the over, so yay verily out there. Tulsa was in action on Wednesday. I don't think I recapped the fact that they're now 18 overs to 9 unders, so they've been able to cash you quite a few overs thus far this season. We've seen quite a bit of action out there in the Big South thus far this season as well, and High Point, they certainly have not been a low point with regards to the totals. 18 overs to 9 unders. They win, but they don't cover against Presbyterian, 79-73 the final. This was a closing total of 151.5, so you just barely got there with High Point going 11 of 26 from three-point range. They've been dealing with an injury to their top scorer in Cameron Fletcher for quite some time, but he's been able to return, came in off the bench. He had 9 points, so that's a relatively good sign for the team. And hey, Gardner-Webb, who has been a very sorry team against the spread. They don't get the outright win against UNC Asheville, but they were leading at the half, 77-71. Asheville gets the win, but no cover out there. If you're looking for a little bit of a brutal beat, and I was in on this one, Delaware and Jacksonville State, they were tied 61-61 at overtime. Game goes over in overtime, and if you like me at Delaware plus 7.5, that was rough. 80-70 the final as Jacksonville State 11 of 24 from three. Jamar Franklin goes 8 of 15 from three-point all by himself, 24 points, and Jacksonville State, who had been shooting for the year less than 70% at the free throw line, they go 17 of 18 at the free throw line. Lost the turnover battle, by the way, 22-11. So that was a little bit of a wackadoo game out there. If you're looking at your best under teams in all of college basketball, Fordham, they continue to be that top team. They weren't in action on Thursday, but 20 unders, 5 overs thus far this season. Yeah, they have certainly been able to cash you there. Your top under team that was in action, that'd be UT Arlington. They are at 7 overs to 18 unders thus far this season, and another slog. Cal Baptist takes it to them, 68-56 the final. Game easily stays under the total. UT Arlington fails to cover the spread, and Dominique Daniels, 28 big points here for Cal Baptist. So that was a under that was able to cash for you. New Haven, 8 overs and 19 unders, and if you've been looking at the NEC, you've had a lot of teams play a lot of slogs thus far this season. Wagner is about a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite, wins 65-62. This game was 22-20 at the half. Closing total is more around about 130 or so you stay under as New Haven 5 of 23 from three-point range. New Haven actually wins the turnover battle 8-6, but they lose the rebound battle 38-31, and for Wagner, 12 of 14 at the free throw line to be able to get you that cover. UT Martin, 8 overs to 19 unders as far this season, as the OVC has been producing a lot of slogs as well. And you had 16 points in the first 11 minutes of this Tennessee Tech versus UT Martin game. UT Martin gets a win and cover 64-49, so you stay very, very comfortably under the total, as Tennessee Tech was 5 of 23 from 3, 6 of 24 for UT Martin, and of the 49 points for Tennessee Tech, 22 of them came at the free throw line. So a little bit of a less than tremendous performance out there. Going back to the NEC, you've got Stone Hill, who's currently played 9 overs to 19 unders. They've dealt with injuries, and hey, they've actually been a halfway decent low post team this far this season. They played a massive over against St. Francis, 103-77 the final, so that was an under that stood no chance whatsoever. Zavante Hackett, boy was he able to hack it on this day. He had himself 40 points, so Stone Hill, they do get a rare over, so they were able to cash that, and Towson has been a good under team as well, 9 overs to 18 unders. They've been a solid defensive team, and boy, they have not been able to get anything going on offense whatsoever. Another non-cover for them, as they have been well below 50% to cover numbers, 58-56. Elon holds in there as 5.5 point underdogs, and for Towson, they are one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, and it got even worse, 3 of 23 from 3-point range. They go 13 of 17 at the free throw line, but that was not enough to be able to cover. Shout out to UNC Wilmington, who's now 14-2 within the conference, 88-65. They take down North Carolina A&T. Right now, they are your top team out there in the Coastal Conference, with Charleston now being 13-4 after they had a slow start in non-conference play, and Charleston was able to get the job done in our AM game, 85-71 over Hampton. And if you're looking at the leader in the clubhouse in Conference USA, Liberty, they take just their second loss in conference play. Kennesaw State go Owls 74-65. They're able to get the job done, as Liberty has been a team that has been a little bit overwhelming this year, 14 overs to 11 unders. This is a game that does stay pretty comfortably under the total, as for Liberty from 3-point range, they were able to launch at just a 8 of 22 clip, which for them is very much down. And for Kennesaw, they played even up with regards to turnover battle, 12-12. And for Liberty down low, they went just 11 out of 20 on their 2-point shots as well. They had a tough time just being able to get good, clean possessions. And Kennesaw State, how about 11 of 18 from 3-point range? So these two teams go a combined 19 out of 40 from 3, and yet you get a nice, comfortable under. That shows you just how slow Liberty plays this season. So that was another fascinating one in Hawaii. They were not playing out there on the island, so I'm actually able to recap one of their games, as they have been one of your top under teams in all of college basketball. They were able to take it to UC Davis, this by a count of 77-73, so they were able to get the cover on the closing line of 1.5. The total was 146.5, so that's a rare over for them, as Hawaii thus far this season has been a nice under team. Same with UC Irvine, and we'll get to them in a second. UC Irvine now at 9 overs to 17 unders thus far this season. Hawaii 9 overs to 16 unders, as Hawaii 10 to 22 from 3-point range. And if you did catch that Irvine game very late, there was a challenge play with a second remaining. It took UC Irvine to just have a last second winner to be able to go in. They find a way to get the job done against Cal State Northridge, aka CSUN, 68-67 the final. Darren Sarin puts in the bucket with time expiring buzzer beater winner for Irvine, who was up 36-24 at the half. They relinquished a lead as they lose a rebound by 37-33, and this game had all sorts of turnovers. How about Josiah Davis trying for the triple-double? 15 points, 10 turnovers, and 6 assists. So that was entertaining, to say the least. But for Irvine, they win this game because they went 9 of 11 at the free throw line, and CSUN went 13 out of 21 at the free throw line. So that was a fun one. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, it has been all about unders and underdogs this far this season. Right now, underdogs against the spread are hitting at 51.4%, 2,539 and 2,400 against the spread. Meanwhile, the under rate is about 50.6%, 2,499 unders and 2,441 overs. If you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, favorites are having a little bit of a better time with it. Underdogs, 158 and 156 against the spread. That's a 50.3% hit rate, and the unders are hitting at about 50.6%. So same as for the pretty much entirety of the season, 159 unders, 155 overs, and I don't think we've had any pushes along the way. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network right here on Let's Go See, with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be joined by this man as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard. So does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he and Kobe Dan, night in and night out, do an absolutely amazing job being able to cover this great sport of college basketball. He also does a great job taking a look at all things West Virginia on the Ryan and Rush Show. Additionally, for the college experience, not just college basketball, they do a great job during the college football season. I know they're getting geared up for a little college baseball as well. That just started up as well. So a jack of all trades and a man that you're able to follow on the old Twitter/X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled MAC on Mac. And it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always appreciate it, man. Less than 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks now towards Selection Sunday.
Oh, we are getting there. And just how do you take a look at the landscape in college basketball? Because going into last week, I feel like we had a big four with Houston, Arizona, Duke, and Michigan, the four teams that took center stage. I think it's fair to say that Houston is probably a cup below those other three teams. And just how do you take a look at those top three teams compared to the rest of the field? Because I do think that they are certainly the best three teams, but I don't think that they're quite as, shall we say, unstoppable as those 4 1 seeds that we had a season ago as well.
I think that we're starting to get a tier two that's really solid as well, Greg. You mentioned it, the top three pretty much I think are clear cut with Arizona, Michigan, and Duke. But then I think that next tier, Florida is red hot, and they got the championship pedigree, Todd Golden and company. Houston, I know they've dropped 3 in a row, but I mean, if you put any of those other three teams in that gauntlet of having to play at Hilton and at the Fog and then play Arizona, I think they might have dropped all 3 or at least 2 out of 3. And then I think Iowa State is really good. And UConn, I think they're starting to peak at the right time as well. We saw them just absolutely embarrass and undress St. John. So I think the tier 2 is a lot better this year than it was last year, and I think that this March Madness is going to be absolutely fantastic.
Yep, and I keep on coming back to this team as well, and I do think that out of the teams outside the top 3 that I just mentioned in Arizona, Michigan, along with Duke, I think that Florida is perhaps the highest ceiling out of those teams because they're doing it right now with absolutely no three-point shooting and no guard play whatsoever. Boogie Flan looked much better a few nights ago against Texas, and if they're even able to get a modicum of backcourt play, I think they could be be right there with any of those three teams.
Agreed. And you also look at what Florida did in the non-con. Two of those three teams are their losses. I mean, they lose a tight one to Arizona. They had a double-digit lead in that game. That was on opening night. Duke, they led for a lot of that game in Cameron. They lost to UConn in the Garden. They're still trying to find their identity. And then they lose a close one to start SEC play with Missouri. And then the one loss I think that really woke them up was Auburn at home at the Swamp. So they're a completely different team in February. They had just as good a chance to repeat as anybody in the country.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I'm very impressed by their low post play. Ruben Chinyelu, just a man amongst boys. So it's going to be interesting to watch him moving forward as Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And certainly it is an interesting landscape in college basketball. And we're doing this ahead of that Michigan State versus Purdue game. But how do you take a look at the landscape outside of Michigan in the Big Ten? Because we are going to be seeing that Michigan-Illinois game. That is going to be a big one, and we'll dive in on that in a minute. But I feel like that battle for number 2 is really interesting, with obviously the winner of Michigan State versus Purdue putting themselves in a nice footing. But that said, we've got an Illinois team that's interesting. I know that Nebraska's hit the skids a little bit, but they've been an intriguing team. And then you have a Wisconsin team that I think might be one of the most volatile teams in the country, where they've knocked off Illinois on the road, they've knocked off Michigan on the road, and then they lose to an awful Oregon team on Wednesday as well. So riddle me that one.
Yeah, Wisconsin's been up and down. Definitely a team that I think could make a run just because of the volatility.
And they could flop.
Yeah, or they could flop. But I think Illinois, we're going to learn a lot about them. Giving Michigan and Champaign, they've really had their number under Brad Underwood, so we'll see if they can continue. I think Purdue is probably the second best team. And then Sparty with Illinois. So I think those are the top 4. I know Nebraska's still 24-4, but I think that they have maximized everything that they can have. But then I think you just have a bunch of solid teams that are probably round of 32 type teams in the NCAA tournament, UCLA and Iowa.
Yep, I think so as well with this Iowa team. They are a team that I just fear when they go up against bigger teams that are able to bully them on the boards. That's going to be a little bit tough for them, but I think that they're a team that with a great draw, they could be able to make a little bit of a run. And then outside the Big Ten, another team that I think they have a lot of volatility based on the draw that they get is Arkansas as well. We saw them have a nice win a few nights ago against Texas A&M. And how do you feel about this team? Because they're a team that in a lot of people's eyes doesn't necessarily make that tier 2, but I think that they're a team with a lot of upside, but I think that they might be one of the most draw-dependent teams when it comes to the NCAA tournament as well, because if they play against smaller teams, they can blow all of those teams out, but if they go up against a team with size like in the SEC, Florida, I think is just a terrible matchup for them, then it could be a little bit of doomsday.
And Arkansas's got the really talented freshman guards. We've seen Cal kind of go against what everybody's going with. Everybody wants to go super old and the portal route, but he's gone the old school route, the old Calipari with Acuff and Malik Thomas. I mean, those two guards are very explosive. They have a little bit of experience in the front court. So you've seen Cal's teams peak at the right time. They went to the Sweet 16 after everybody wrote them off last year. We'll see if they can do it again here.
Yep, absolutely. As Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is joining me on Coast to Coast Soups, and we gave a little bit of an appetizer for the big game that we're going to be seeing on Friday. That'll be Illinois-Michigan. Right now in a lot of books, Michigan is the 1.5 point road favorite. 1 or 2 books actually did make Illinois the favorite, so it depends upon your book and when you're listening to this. Total's about 156.5, 157.5. What do you make out of this game with an Illinois team that I still think that they're rock solid, but they just have not been able to pull out those close games? And for Michigan, they've been a dominant team all season, but they didn't necessarily look great against Minnesota, and obviously got a little bit exposed over the weekend against Duke.
Michigan not really playing well or playing their best ball right now. You're getting Illinois coming off a loss. I like Michigan here. I think Michigan has a little bit more firepower. I think they've had this one circled. Illinois has won the last 5+ in the series. I think it's a Michigan spot here. I think that they're able to dominate the paint, and I think their size on the perimeter can really disrupt Illinois. Illinois had a week to prepare for this game, but I usually like fading those teams coming back from the West Coast. So I'll be on Michigan tomorrow. I think they get it done against the Fighting Illini in Champaign. Could be a fun game, though.
Oh, it is going to be a fun game, and thank goodness gracious, we actually have a big one on this Friday as well, because outside of that, we've got a lot of Sunbelt play. They always do that in the last, shall we say, week of the regular season, where we get a lot of these Sunbelt games. And how do you take a look at that conference? Because they're going to be one of the first conference tournaments that starts, and that's always the old stepladder format, where if you make a run from the first round of the Sunbelt tournament and you make it into the NCAA tournament, you have earned it, because I think they have to win like 6 or 7 games to be able to do so. And this is actually a very critical night for all these teams because if I'm not mistaken, at last check, I think that there were 4 teams with 6 losses at the top of the Sunbelt, where it's been just a complete and utter wackadoo conference where the only thing that we know is that Louisiana Monroe has been terrible this year.
There's a lot of scenarios on the board. Troy, App State, South Alabama, Marshall, 11-6. You got Ark State and Coastal and Texas State all 10-7 right behind them. I still don't understand why this league has this format because they don't have a dominant team. And you don't really earn the quadruple buys because you just win it via all these crazy tiebreakers. But this league is wacky. Who knows who's going to win this? It wouldn't shock me if a team like Old Dominion, who had a bunch of expectations coming into the year, is able to right the ship, or Louisiana, who's been able to get hot and play better under the first-year head coach there. So Georgia Southern, they were good in the non-con. They've kind of hit the lumps there. I mean, the teams in the basement, I think, have a lot of value. JMU had all the expectations. They've disappointed. But come next week, it's a new season down there in Pensacola.
Now, if you try to tell me that Louisiana Monroe has won the conference tournament, I do not. I am not going to be able to buy that. But any of the other teams, if you just put those names at hat and you pull one out, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's not Louisiana Monroe. Sounds good to me. So there's that. That's Louisiana Monroe, 14 points in the first half against South Alabama a few nights ago. That was rough. And we also have some interesting play going down on Friday with Miami of Ohio, the lone undefeated team, being that 12.5 point favorite against Western Michigan. And just how do you take a look at, for one, Miami of Ohio on Friday, and just 2, moving forward, because there's a lot of just chatter about whether or not they're going to get an at-large if they lose in the MAC tournament, what have you. But I am for this Miami of Ohio team, but I think their best attribute is that they're probably hearing all this noise. There's a lot of people talking about them nationally, and yet time and time again, they just look focused, and time again, they've just gotten the job done.
They really have, and they've gotten better throughout the year. It's an experienced team. If they go 31-0, I want to say, I think I said this last time on your show, Greg. It's an absolute joke if they lose one game in the conference tournament and they don't get in. I mean, come on, man. Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about all these SEC and Big Ten teams that are.
Oh, let's put it a 13-loss Indiana team over a 1-loss Miami of Ohio team. That would be a load of crap.
A total load of crap. But I'm going to go to the game next week in Athens for the perfect season if they can not get tripped up. I don't think they're going to get tripped up in either of these games, though, Greg. They kind of, like I said, with all their experience here, they've kind of tuned out all the noise. I think I'm going to lay. I think they're going to get to 29-0 and make another statement. Western Michigan has just been a team that I haven't really been able to trust. Yes, they have been better at home, but I still can't trust them. I mean, in the first meeting, they did keep it within 11. It was a nice cover for them, but I like Miami of Ohio here on Friday night.
Yep, and I think that a lot of people would be surprised to know not only is Miami of Ohio the lone undefeated team, but they're also your top against the spread team thus far this season as well. And how much do you think that the outside noise might actually be helping you against the spread? Because Miami of Ohio is probably hearing, oh, if they lose one game, they might not be in the NCAA tournament, and they want to do everything possible to be able to send a statement to not just win this game by like 5 or 6 points, but to absolutely embarrass teams like Western Michigan.
It feels like college football, Greg, at the end with the playoff. I think you see teams run up the score. Style points matter. I think style points matter here. I think Miami of Ohio is hearing all the noise, and they're just laughing, going, like, are you kidding me? If we go 31-1 and we get picked off in the MAC tournament, which is always a crazy tournament, we're not in. So, yeah, run up the score here, Miami of Ohio, and keep covering for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to be able to see that, and I'm going to be on the exact same side of view of that game. Don't want to go past a 13, but right now seeing 12.5, I'm going to be willing to lay that in. Is there anything else that's really standing out to you for Friday? Because we've got some Ivy League action. The rest of the MAC, including teams like Akron and company, are going to be in action, and we always get the other MAC. I call it the MAAC as well. Anything else that's really catching your attention?
So one of my favorite games every year is Kent versus Akron. I mean, these two teams hate each other, Greg. I mean, you remember the viral video of Kent State, an Akron player yelling about how much he hates Kent State, and then he fights in this matchup. They dominated the first meeting, but when this game's been at Kent, man, it's always a chippy game, and I like the dog here. I like Kent State live on the money line. They're playing good ball. They won 4 in a row. Rob Senderoff does an unbelievable job, I think. He's one of the more underrated coaches here. Akron, I know, is kind of just quietly been 14-1 on the heels of Miami of Ohio, but Kent State's right on their heels at 12-3. So I like Kent State to pull the upset and hand Akron another loss here. This is going to be a fun game here. in a raucous environment.
Oh, I remember. I think that it was 3 years ago when that fight broke out as well. That was a very memorable game. I think that was the year that Kent State made the NCAA tournament with Sincere Carey and all those guys. So, absolutely. This is going to be a fun one. And I'm very gassed up for what we're all going to be getting on Thursday. And I know that you, Ryan, are doing a great job looking at this great game of college basketball. You're breaking down all these games with our good friend Kobe Dan, doing an amazing job of doing so. And you've got a lot of irons in the fire with college baseball and so much more. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Always appreciate it, Greg. And we'll be out in Vegas here in a couple weeks too. So hope to catch you then. But yeah, go check us out at the College Experience every single night, breaking down every single game. It's a fun time to be alive. This is a great time of year. The weather starts getting a little bit warmer, which means March is coming. So yeah, and I'm at Moneyline_Mac, and always appreciate you having me on, brother.
Absolutely. And the last time we had you on, we had to give the ode to Ryan McIntyre with the official beer of West Virginia, which got above an 8 out of 10. It was quite solid. So we might need to divulge in some of those when you come out here to lovely Las Vegas, as Ryan, he's doing such an amazing job looking at this great sport, and every single time he joins me, lends incredible insight. So a big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ryan McIntyre, who does such amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order today. That is pretty much time order. We don't have any games on the extra board or anything like that, so we're just going to be going straight down the line and having ourselves some fun. So let's start things off with 851-852. Yale's on the road against Cornell. Cornell is a home underdog of 2.5 to 3.5 points. On this game, it is 165.5, and I like the over. I saw my total at 170.5. Cornell just has a perfect storm for playing a bunch of overs because they are a ridiculous tempo team in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Cornell group that is 14th in the country. They're 37th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they shoot 38% for three, 16th in the country, and boy, are they bad on defense. They are 342nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, 354th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage at 37.9%. Yale, their line teams shoot 35.3% from three, but they make for it up on offense as they shoot 41% from the outside. That is second in the country, sixth in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So I think they get a slugfest. Now, I could only set Yale as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 3+ with Cornell. Cornell, a little bit of a better rebounding team than they've been in past years with Casper Sepp, who comes over from Valparaiso, now giving you 5+ rebounds per game to be able to give this team a little bit of balance. For Cornell, you've got just some very good sharpshooters. Cooper Norhead has been able to supply 18.5 points, pair of assists, shoots 38.5% from three. Jake Feigen, 40% three-point shooter. Adam Sang-Hinton, he's in it already. He's been able to give the team 12.5 points. He's been shooting it at about a 42% clip from three-point range as well. And then on the flip side of things, you've got a Yale team that has a guy that's shooting darn near 50% from three-point range, and Nick Townsend, all sorts of versatility here. 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, a little bit over 4 assists per game for a Yale team that they're honestly not very up-tempo. In terms of total possessions per game, they check in at just 298th in all of college basketball, but they do a nice job in terms of just making the most out of their possessions because they're a top 30 team. In terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, they're also solid on the inside as well. They've got a top 100 mark with regards to their overall rebound percentage. You're not allowing a ton of second and third chances with having Samson Alton being able to supply about 9 points, block and a half, 6 rebounds per game. Isaac Salazar, 12.5 points, 5.5 6.5 rebounds per game, but with the way that Cornell is just able to find points at home, I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there, and it is a Yale team that does very much give it up from three-point range. It's a Cornell team that I think in a three-point shooting expose, they're going to be able to hold in there. In the end, I did say Yale as a 2.5 point favorite, so we'll have to take 3+ here with Cornell, and I like the over. So my total at a 170.5, 853, 854. Miami of Ohio is on the road against Western Michigan. Western Michigan, a home underdog of 12 to 12.5 points, 160.5 to 161.5 is the total. This was an opener of 163.5, which I agreed with. It's come down, so that means I'm in on the over. Did set my total at a 163.5, as this Miami of Ohio team has just been incredible with their offense. Currently 13th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot better away from home than at home from three-point. They shoot 37% from the outside at home, 38.2% in a road/shoot score venue. Now, the one thing that they really don't do is grab a lot of second and third chances, and to the credit of Western Michigan, they are a team that's been able to grab them for themselves a few second and third chances, top 200 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, so they've been able to do a pretty solid job there. That said, it's a Western Michigan team that's getting absolutely blasted on the defensive side of things. Western Michigan about 298th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 300th with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and Western Michigan has had a tough time taking care of the ball outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis. And for Miami of Ohio, it's not a supreme defense, but I think that it gets a little bit more hate than what it deserves. They're a top 85 team in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and in games played away from home, this goes into the top 45, top 100 team in terms of generating turnovers as well. But for Western Michigan, their offense has been a little bit better ever since Justice Williams, who missed the first 13 games of the season, has come in 15 points, shoots 39% from three. Jalen Griffith shoots 40% from the outside, 12.5 points per contest. Shane Brewer, a little bit of everything out of him, 12.5 points, a block, 6.5 boards, and then you have Brady Schwartz, who's now been able to shoot about 34% from three, but just way too many weapons here for Miami of Ohio against a ghastly defense. Brent Byers along with Peter Suter, they both give you 14.6 points per game, and as a matter of fact, for Miami of Ohio, they're still dealing with the injury to Evan Upsero, but among their top 8 scorers that are currently healthy, they all shoot at least 35.7% from three-point range. They do a functional job in terms of not allowing you to get second and third chances on the glass, with having about 10 points, 5.5 boards, a steal and a half, and a block per contest out of Antoine Woolfolk. He's a little bit of a do-it-all guy. Down low, it's a Miami of Ohio team that if they need to cover at the free throw line, they shoot about 76% at the charity stripe as well, so they've been able to do a solid job with that regard. Miami of Ohio, a top 80 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're very much looking to crank it up tempo, 39th in the country in terms of total possessions, bringing Western Michigan more of a mid-tempo team at 154. So, like the over, so I told 163.5, and I'm willing to lay up to 13 here with Miami of Ohio. 855, 856, Quinnipiac is on the road against Niagara. Niagara is a home underdog of 8.5 points, 135.5 to 136.5 is the total, and I mean, my total a 137.5. I do like the over. Now, it's a bunch of Niagara that is about 362nd and 363rd, depending upon the day. In terms of total possessions per game, they're playing very slowly. They're outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis overall, but they're a better offensive team at home rather than away from home. They shoot 39.9% from three-point range at home, 29.6% in a road/shoot score venue. Meanwhile, you've got a Quinnipiac team that has actually shot much better from three-point range away from home rather than at home. 36.3% away from home, 32.7% at home, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Quinnipiac. I did set them as a favorite of 9.5 points, as for Niagara, they only have one double-figure score on the books for them, and right now he's dealing with injury. That'd be Justin Page, who's been give the team about 12 points, 2.5 assists per game, doesn't really shoot it well from three, but we've not seen him since February 3rd, so that means that Justin Hawkins, along Trenton Walters, who combined for 16 points per game between the two of them, and they should have combined about 37.5% from three. They're the main two guys in the backcourt. They do combine for about 5 assists per game, but it's a Niagara group that they just don't have anything on the inside. There's not a single guy on the roster that gives you over 4.7 rebounds per game, as Josiah Sabino, Will Short, they combine for 9.3 rebounds per game, and nobody else gives you over 3.2 rebounds per contest. Niagara is dead last in the country in terms of free throw attempts per game, so they don't even try to get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 260 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage on defense as well. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I do like the over. As for Quinnipiac, they're going to be able to control things down low. You've got Amari Monroe, give you 15.5 points, 8 boards, 2 steals, 2.5 assists per game, so he's been stuffing the stat sheet. It is a Quinnipiac team that gives up quite a few second and third chances on the glass, but not much of a threat here with Niagara outside the top 340 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, Quinnipiac 47th, they grab 33.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Gene Zimmerman has been a rock-solid top scorer, 16 points, shoots 34% from three, and Isim Jones continues to shoot 48.5% from three, 12 points per contest. Grant Randall, 11.6 boards. Keith McKnight, he gives you about 6 rebounds. Quinnipiac, even though they shoot just 68.5% of the free throw line, I think they get the job done against a short-handed and not very good Niagara team that, even though they're bad on offense, they're also bad on defense. So I'm willing to lay here with Quinnipiac, made them a 9.5 point favorite, and I like the over. Semi-total 137.5, 857, 858. Fairfield is going to be playing goes to Siena. Siena's anywhere between a 1.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog, depending upon your book. Total on this game is 144.5. I'm going to try to get a money line underdog price here on Siena. I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. Worst comes to worst, I'll just lay the 1.5, but I'm in on Siena either way. It's a bunch that they really like to slow down games. In terms of total possessions per game, a nice hearty 359th in the country. Fairfield, no blazer themselves, 359th in terms of total possessions per game, but for Fairfield, they're not cashing it on the inside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage at home. Now, Fairfield has done an incredible job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. 34th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They grab 34.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That does slip outside the top 85 when they're at home. And this has been a Siena team that has been a top 85 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage when they've been away from them. And this has been a Siena team that has been one of the best road defenses in all of college basketball. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/shoot-score venue, it is a Siena team that is currently 30th in the country, 42nd in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis away from home. Now you do have a Fairfield team that has been a top 75 group in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Siena's not a great 3-point shooting team. They shoot a hair above 30% from three overall for the season. Has been better in conference play at about 33.3% from the outside, but I think they control this game with Gavin Doty giving you 17.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three. You've had Justice Schultz in the backcourt do a nice job leading things, 13 points, 4.5 assists, 7.5 per contest, and Siena also does a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're also a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well, and for this Fairfield group, you've been able to get a lot out of Braden Sparks. He leads away with 17 points, a steal, shoots 40% from three, and then the reason why they've been so good on the glass is Brandon Benjamin, Declan Wolfinger. They have been able to combine for about 17.9 rebounds per game. Between the two of them, you get about 27 points per game. Was expecting a little bit more out of Deuce Turner down for what, but still it's give you about 8.5 points, just under a steal per contest, so has been pretty solid there. It's a Fairfield defense that you're neither here nor there on. They're just outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, just inside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. You look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, about 192nd in the country, and if Siena does find themselves on a little bit of a pressure spot where they need to win the game, they do shoot 75.5% at the free throw line. That is a top 75 mark in the country. Fairfield more around about 71.9%. So I do like Siena here on the money line / as a very slight favorite. Made them a 2.5 point favorite, and I like the under. Semi-total 138.5, 859, 860. Mount St. Mary's is going to be on the road against Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart does find themselves as a bit of a favorite here of 2.5 points. 149.5 is the total, and I'm going to be in on this over. I semi-total at a 152 as Sacred Heart is really not playing a lot of defense right now in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are a nice hearty 300th in the country, and for Mount St. Mary's, they've been an okay defense. They've been 114th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Very strong down low. They're a top 45 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Can be at a little bit more from the outside, though, as they're allowing teams to shoot in the neighborhood about 33.7% from 3-point range away from home, and they're not putting ball pressure on you. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Sacred Heart has had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. They're 257th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Mount St. Mary's is even worse. Mount St. Mary's 364th out of 365 teams, and that's why I just can't trust them in this spot. I am going to be willing to lay it with the Sacred Heart team. With Mount St. Mary's, you do have a nice little collective of guys that give you between 11 to 12 points per game. A trio of guys in Trey DeVue, Orlandis Keys, along Luke McKeldin. McKeldin throws in there about 6 boards, and your main 3-point shooter is Keys, shooting about 37% from three. Mount St. Mary's outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they need to cover at the free throw line. They shoot 67.4% at the free throw line. That is not too great, to say the least, but they've been a country average team with regards to their interior offense. And this is a Sacred Heart team that they are looking to go bombs away from 3-point range. They are in the top 15 in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range. And Sacred Heart, they get back in Cornell. He was really struggling towards the beginning part of the season with his 3-point shooting after being a 40+% outside shooter last season. He's up to about 17.5 points, shooting 32.5% from three, but coming off the injury has shot above 35% from the outside. And then for Sacred Heart overall this season, they have been shooting 37.4% from 3-point range in their home games. A big reason why has been Well, you've been able to get out of Niagara off Fire, 43.5% three-point shooter, 14 points, 4 boards per contest. Deshaun Gittins, he's getting it all, 14 points, steal and a half per contest, shoots 42% per three. Jan Farrell, 40% three-point shooter, 11.5 points per game. And then Mekhi Connor brings it all together with 6 assists, a steal per contest for Sacred Heart. They need to cover at the free throw line. They shoot 77.3% at the charity stripe. And this is a Mount St. Mary's team that is outside the top 275 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Sacred Heart neither here nor there with their tempo, 197th in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that late fouls get you over, and I do think that Sacred are able to go bombs away from 3, so I like the over, so my total 152, and I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with Sacred Heart. 861, 862, you've got Dartmouth, and they're going to be on the road against Penn, and the Quakers of Penn do find themselves as a favorite here of 6.5 to 7 points. It's on this game, 153.5, and with Penn, I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite, so 7 plus that does become my buy point on Dartmouth, and for both teams, they've been able to shoot it really well from 3-point range. This Penn group right now is shooting about 38.7% from 3-point range at its 11th in the country. That falls, though, to 34.5% from 3-point range at home, though. That's a country average mark. Meanwhile, Dartmouth away from home, they shoot 38.6% from 3-point range. That's a top 20 mark in the country, and it's a Dartmouth team that has actually been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the arc. Really, both of these teams have been able to do so. Dartmouth, in games played away from home, teams are shooting just 30.8% from 3-point range against them. That is a top 40 mark in the country. Meanwhile, with this Penn group, they're allowing teams at home to shoot only 29.8% from 3-point range, so it's an interesting circumstance here, as you've got both of these teams being really neither here nor there in terms of their tempo. Penn, in terms of total possessions per game, 188th in the country. Dartmouth, they're more around about 174th, but I did set a total here of a 154.5. I do think that it's going to be close enough for late fouls, so I'm going to be in on the over. You do have a Dartmouth team that's been not taking care of the ball outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but it's not a Penn group that's really going to generate a ton of turnovers. Country average team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Penn can be very much ahead down low. They're outside the top 3 with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but you do have TJ Power, Ethan Roberts, who combine for 32.2 points per game. You've got Power shooting 40% from 3, Roberts 43% from the outside between the two of them. You do get about 11.3 rebounds per game, and Penn has honestly been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of grabbing offensive rebounds, even though they neither guard the 2 well or shoot it well from 2-point range. This is a group that is right now a top 160 team in terms of percentage of the missed shots that results in an offensive rebound. Dartmouth is hot. Dartmouth is 345th in the country, so that's a little bit of an issue. So they're going to have probably some problems down low with Augustus Gerard, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. But Michael Zanoni has been a 40% 3-point shooter for Penn, who's been able to give you double figures as well. But do like the versatility of Brandon Mitchell-Day at 6'8". He gives you 11 points, 9 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range. And while this is a Dartmouth team that they're not going to reel in for themselves any sort of second and third chances whatsoever, this is a much more stout team on the inside in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. They've taken a step back from a season ago, but they're still a top 175 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. You've been able to get really good production of your main scorer, Kareem Thomas, who's been shooting about 46% from 3-point shooters, and they're about 16.5 points per game. Jaden Williams throws in there about 12 points per contest as well. It's a Dartmouth team that's right around about 200th with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Dartmouth in a pressure spot, they shoot about 74% in the free throw line. They're also not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 3 with regards to total possessions per game. I do think that helps you out to the over, so I'm going to take 7 plus here with Dartmouth. Semi-total 154.5, so I'm also in on that total over as well. 863, 864, you've got Brown on the road against Columbia, and what can Brown do for you? Well, they don't get blown out, they'll make you money. They're 5.5 to 6.5 point underdogs. 139.5 to 140.5 is the total. Do not think that Brown is going to be doing much for you. I set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Columbia. This is a Columbia group that has a massive advantage on the glass. Columbia, top 20 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage, 18th to be exact. Brown is 239th, and Brown is just not giving you any offense whatsoever. 330th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Needless to say, they are not delivering there. You've got Landon Lewis, who's been able to give you 16.5 points, 7 boards, pair of assists. She's 43% from 3 on very low volume, and he has a lone double-figure score on the roster. Now, Jeremiah Jenkins has done a nice job at the point guard spot, 8.5 points, 5.5 assists, 2 steals per contest, shoots 35% from 3-point range, but it's a Brown team that they can't even execute on the inside. They're outside the top 230 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 255 in terms of ball security. Now, the one thing that Brown has going for them is that they should be able to do a good job on the turnover battle. They are a top 60 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and this is a bunch in Columbia that could be a little bit lackadaisical in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Both of these teams are rough, as Brown is 296th, Columbia 329th, but with Columbia. This is also a very nice three-point shooting team as well, as right now they're shooting about 36.9% from three. That is a top 40 mark in the country. Just overall versatility on this team, as you've been able to have the 6'8" combo player in Blair Thomas supply about 11 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 43+% from three-point. Kenny Nolan, 17 points, shoots 91% the free throw line, 39% from three-point. George O'Keefe, 40+% three-point shooter, gives you about 9 points per game for Columbia. They don't allow you to get second and third chances. They themselves grab a lot of second and third chances, and they're going to be able to dominate down low, as they've been a top 90 team with their own two-point shooting percentage, top 75 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, with this being a Brown team that, away from home, they're allowing teams to shoot over 34% from three-point range. They've been outside the top 150 with regards to their opponents' two-point shooting percentage, albeit they do a nice job in terms of not allowing a ton of second and third chances, but they have been a team that just has not been able to do a good job of executing on offense. Do think that Columbia is able to get the job done here, so set a total of a 139.5 at a 140 plus. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay it here with Columbia. Made them the 11.5 point favorite. 865, 866. Dayton is on the road against George Washington. Our nation's first president, George Washington, is a 3.5 point favorite. Throughout game 152.5 to 153.5, and I'm willing to lay with George Washington. Set them as a 4.5 point favorite. The key here for George Washington is taking care of the ball. Dayton is supreme in terms of generating turnovers, top 5 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated on defense, and it is a George Washington team that's had a tough time taking care of the ball. 250th in regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but that does go into the top 200 when they are at home, and this is a George Washington team that can exploit a Dayton team that does gamble a little bit for turnovers. As George Washington, they shoot about 35.8% from three-point range. That's a top 80 mark in the country, and with this Dayton squad, while they do such a great job in terms of generating turnovers, top 85 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, in games played away from home, teams shoot 39.2% from three-point range against them. That's well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball, and for George Washington, at home teams are only shooting about 31.9% from three-point range against them. This is not a Dayton team that's going to be able to do a good job on the boards, as right now for Dayton, in terms of offensive rebound percentage, sure, in 77th. They grab only about 21.2% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound when they're away from home, as well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. George Washington, meanwhile, they grab 34.8% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is 23rd in the country. Now, Emil Latang for Dayton does give you a little bit of versatility. He's right around 7'1", 7'2". He's able to pop a few threes, gives his team 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. Javon Bennett has been a 16 point per game scorer. That gives you only about 33% three-point shooting, but does shoot 91% at the free throw line. And it's a Dayton team that is in the top 15 in the country in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, so that'll be able to help them out a little bit here, as I did set my total at a 150.5. Right now, seeing the 151.5, 152.5. I like the under mainly because you're going to get the turnovers, even though you've got a pair of teams that are brisk tempo teams. George Washington, 118th in terms of total possessions per game. Dayton is about 153rd, but also for this Dayton team, they're just not the same three-point shooting team that they've been in the past. They shoot 33.9% from the outside. That's outside the top 185 in all of college basketball, and you've been able to have Jordan Durkock be able to give you some nice versatility. I saw with injury, but he's been able to supply for this team right around about 8 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists per game. But for George Washington, I do think that they are going to be able to do a nice job in terms of manhandling things down low. I know that they've been dealing with a few injuries of their own, as their top rebounder in Rafael Castro has been in and out of the lineup overall for the season. He's playing for the team right around about 16 points per game. I think that there's a chance that he's going to be able to give you a full allotment of minutes here. He played against LaSalle. They only needed him for 24 minutes because they completely blew him out, so should be able to go here. Trey Autry, he shoots 39% from three, about 10.5 points per contest. Trey Dinkins has been nice in the backcourt with about 2 assists, 9 points, shoots 40% from three, and then you've got guys like Luke Hunger, who's able to give you 5 rebounds per game. Tyrell Marshall throws in their 4.5 rebounds per game. I think that allows George Washington to be able to get the job done here. Willing to lay up to 4 with our nation's first president, and in on the under. Semi-total 150.5. 867, 868. Princeton is playing us Harvard, and Harvard, these smart kids, are road favorites of 3.5 points, and really you got all sorts of smart kids in this game. Total on this game anywhere between 129.5 to a 130.5. I do like the over. I set my total at a 132. I recognize that these two teams are looking to play at a snail's pace. As for Harvard, they are 358th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Princeton is 345th, but both of these teams are looking to pop it from three. Princeton at home has been shooting 35.6% from three-point range. That's a top 150 mark in the country. Meanwhile, Harvard has shot it really well from three away from home. 36.6% 40%. That is a top 40 mark in the country, and you do have a Princeton team that's been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of guarding the three-point line, and I think that it's interesting that Harvard, if you look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, are in 12th, but they're actually giving up about 3.4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. Princeton, meanwhile, they're 280th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been a respectable team in terms of being able to guard the three-point line, which I think keeps them very lively in this game. Right now, teams are shooting about 32.2% from three against them. That's a top 150 mark in the country, where they're getting blasted. It's down low. Princeton is outside the top 290 in their own two-point shooting percentage and opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but getting back Dayton Davis, who missed 9 games earlier in the season, he spies you with about 14.5 points, shoots 35.5% from three-point. That's big. You've got Jackson Hickey shooting 38.5% from three, about 15 points per contest, and then Malik Abdullah has been able to give you 6 boards per contest. It's a Princeton team that is not going to give themselves second and third chances. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. One thing that they do a nice job of, though, is holding you to a one-and-done possession. Now, they need to do a better job with that perimeter defense, but still, 58th in the country in terms of percentage of missed shots become an offensive rebound for opponents. Harvard, not too bad here as well. 104th, but that does ascend into the top 75 when they're away from home, and one thing Harvard really does have going for them is that if this is indeed a tight game, this is one of the best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. Harvard right now shooting 79.8% at the free throw line. That's a top 5 mark in the country. Robert Dayton, he's in at Art with 17 points, steal and a half, shoots 34% from three. Tay Barber shoots 40% from three, 13.5 points per contest. Chandler Piggy, Thomas Beatties, they combine for 25 points per game, and Beatties is now shooting 46% from three. Not a lot of depth outside that, but again, they're not playing very fast, and good news for them is that Princeton is not as well, so they're not going to get completely exhausted. And for Harvard, they've been able to do a nice job towards the guarding the perimeter as well. Teams are shooting less than 32% from three-point range against them. That is a top 100 mark in the country, but that said, this is a team that does not really create a lot of havoc in terms of generating turnovers. They're well outside the top 200 with that regard, and they're outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. So I do think that Princeton is going to be able to remain lively. Their numbers are a little bit warped with the time that they were without Dayton Davis as well. So set a total of 132. I'm going to be in on the over, and at 2.5 plus, won't take the points with Princeton, made them a 2-point dog. 869, 870. St. Peter's is going to be playing against Manhattan. The Jaspers find themselves as an underdog of 7.5 to 8 points. 146.5 is the total, and I made a total of a 144.5. I'm in on the under. I just don't know if you get enough possessions for the over. Manhattan is 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and this St. Peter's team, they are playing at a snail's pace, around 15th in terms of total possessions per game. One thing that works against St. Peter's in this game is the fact that they have been putting teams on the free throw line a ton, and this is a Manhattan team that has actually been one of the best teams in the country in terms of free throw percentage. This is a St. Peter's team that is a top 25 team in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis, so that is a little bit of an issue. Manhattan, by the way, in terms of that free throw shooting percentage, 4th in the country, 79.3%, falls to 77.5% away from home, but still a really good number. Meanwhile, you've got a St. Peter's team that they're probably going to get a lot of trips to the free throw line. They shoot about 74.5% at the free throw line at home, overall 75%, so that's the top 100 mark, but I do think that St. Peter's is going to be able to cover this game and keep it under because they are that slow of team for one, and for two, this team is really good in terms of generating turnovers. Top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they can't shoot for St. Peter's. They're outside the top 310 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, but they're a top 20 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Headlined by Bryce Eaton along with Brett Bland. They combine for 25.1 points per game. Bland shoots 37% from three. Really the lone guy on the roster outside of Eric Morgan Jr., who averages 4 points per game. That shoots about 31.5% from three, but chips in there 4.5 boards, 2.2 steals per contest. With Eaton, he gives you 4 assists per game, so does a nice job flowing good, clean offense. And I mean, it's the St. Peter's team, and it's about a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball, neither here nor there. Manhattan has been pretty okay in terms of taking care of the ball as well. Top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They really don't execute on the inside. They're outside the top 270 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage on offense, and also on defense outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they just give up way too many second and third chances. I mean, that is the bread and butter for this St. Peter's team, and for Manhattan outside the top 340 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Or line teams to grab 12.7 offensive rebounds per game. You do have Devin Dinkins along Jaden Winston headlining things in the backcourt, a combined 28 points per game between the two of them. They shoot about 35.5% from three, and then Frazier Knight at the Roxborough has been able to give you about 6 boards, 11 points, shoots about 34% from three-point. It's a Manhattan team, though, that in conference play, they've been down to about 31.7% with their 3-point shooting percentage, so that's been a little bit of a problem for Manhattan. They're also a team that really gives it up from three. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. I do think that St. Peter's is going to be able to get sort of their tempo in this game with Manhattan. I think that they're just going to be not able to execute down low. That's going to allow St. Peter's to be able to grab those second and third chances, slow this game down, and get the job done. So I'm willing to lay up to 8 here with St. Peter's, made them an 8.5 point favorite, and I like the under. I made my total a 144.5, 871, 872. Merrimack is on the road against Canisius, and Canisius is going to be a home underdog here of 9.5 to 10.5 points. 130.5 to 131.5 is the total, and I like the under. I set my total 125.5. This is a Merrimack defense that is just absolutely swarming right now, and they're one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. 352nd for Merrimack in terms of total possessions per game. Overall, they're about 86th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you put them in a road/neutral venue that does ascend into the top 65. They cut down on clean possessions even further with the way that they've been able to generate turnovers. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, this team is 28th in the country. Merrimack does a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball, but they're also outside the top 255 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis when they're away from home, and Canisius country average team, about 204th with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Canisius, also a very slow and controlled team, 348th in terms of total possessions per game, 352nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. One place where Canisius is going to have an edge, though, on the glass. This Merrimack team is outside the top 360 in terms of rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you got a Canisius team that does find themselves in the top 225. Brian Nadanja, Khalil Singleton, they combine for about 27.5 points per game, and both shoot above 75% of the free throw line. Singleton does shoot 38% for three. Michael Everbrow has been able to give you about 7 rebounds, 9 points, a little bit over a steal per contest. You've had Javante Edwards be able to step up in a nice way as well, 6.5 points. Really doesn't pop it from 3, but Miles Molmuth does give you a block per game, and for this Canisius team, they've been able to do an okay job in terms of guarding the arc. Top 175 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, where they're getting absolutely lambasted on the inside. They're outside the top 3 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and it's a Merrimack team that has been really good both on the inside and the outside. They're 42nd in opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, 10th in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they don't finish on the inside on offense. On offense, outside the top 275 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. Xavier Kennedy, he gives you 18 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists, shoots 35% from 3, and then Ernest Sheldon, he shoots 36% from the outside, 16 points per game, but team as a whole, they shoot 32.7% from 3-point range. That is outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. Now, in a pressure spot, they do shoot 78.8% at the free throw line. That is a top 10 mark in the country, but that said, I do think that this spread has gone up a little bit too far to where even if they do hit those late free throws, I don't know if they quite cover. I did set my line at 8.5. Think that you're in for a slog of a game, so I like the under, made my total 125.5, and going to make my line 8.5, so and 9 plus taking those points with Canisius. 873, 874. Ryder is on the road against Iona. Iona is a favorite here of 11.5 to 12.5 points. So this game 141.5. I'm willing to lay it. I set my number at a 17.5. For Ryder, I do think that they're going to play a little bit more of an open gym style in this game, as in terms of total possessions per game, they're 338th, but they're eliminated from being able to partake in the MAC tournament. Their season is pretty much over, and it has been a disaster of a season for Ryder. As right now, they're outside the top 335 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, you have Flash Burton along Zion Cruz, who are combining for about 28.2 points per game, and both are now shooting 30% for 3. Yay, verily, but they're still as a whole shooting 28.1% from 3-point. That's a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. Iona, meanwhile, they're allowing teams to shoot less than 31% from 3. They're a top 40 team there, and what has been the kryptonite for Iona is the fact that they have been bad on the glass. They're outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage. Ryder, though, is allowing teams to grab about 32.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and for this Ryder bunch, they just are not doing a great job in general in terms of guarding the 3-point line themselves, as right now they are allowing teams to shoot well above 36% from 3-point range. That's a big giant issue for an Iona team that they don't have a ton on the inside, but they do have a guy that I like in CJ Anthony. He's done a nice job giving the team 14.5 points, 5 assists. He shoots about 38% from 3-point range. Toby Harris shoots 41% from the outside. Iona overall, they shoot about 35.2% from 3. That's a top 110 mark in the country. They're going to have the top overall rebounder in this game, Lamont Sulliby. He's been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. If there's one thing Ryder has done an okay job of, they're a top 85 team in terms of offense rebound percentage. Caleb Smith, Shamani Fuller, they combine for 13 rebounds per game between the two of them, get about 14 points per game as well, but I do think that Iona just going to be able to go out here and overwhelm this game. Iona, country average team in terms of both generating turnovers on a per possession basis and taking care of the ball themselves, but Ryder, they're well outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, with Iona being a team that's been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of being able to guard the perimeter and just take hold of the perimeter. I think that they get the job done in a higher scoring game. Iona, when they were in non-conference play, they were one of the faster teams of the country. They've been slowed down here in Metro Atlantic play to being about 137th in terms of total possessions per game, but do think that they get the job done here and they take it to an Iona team that I think might be playing a little bit faster in this game. Set my total out of 145.5, like the over, and I'm willing to lay it here with Iona. Made them a 17.5 point favorite. 870 875, 876. Louisiana Monroe is on the road against Troy. The men of Troy are a sizable favorite of 18.5 to 19 points. 155.5 to 156.5 is the total. I made a total of 158. I do like the over. You've got a Louisiana Monroe team that they're not great on defense. 356th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Oh, and they're playing fast. 57th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This Troy team has been playing quite fast as well. 150 in terms of total possessions per game. Now, if you look at it in terms of possessions per 40 minutes, because they played the triple overtime game against USC, the double overtime game against San Diego State, probably closer to about 135th, but still, they're playing at a pretty solid pace, and it's a Louisiana Monroe team that they're going to get absolutely blasted on the glass. They're a bottom 20 team in the country with regards to overall rebound percentage. Lavelle Bruneau does give you 14.5 points, 8.2 rebounds per game. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. Now, Christian Lewis has been a really good scorer, 18.5 points, shoots 32% from 3 Siena per contest. Matavius Russell, 15 points per contest. He shoots 32% from 3, but for Louisiana Monroe, after they were getting things going from 3-point range, they're down to shooting about 32% from the outside. That's a big giant issue, and for Troy, they've got a double-double machine that's going to be able to dominate things down low. And Thomas Dowd, 14 points, 10 boards, block and half per contest. Victor Valdez, well, he doesn't pop it from 3, gives you 15 points, 4.5 assists per game, and then the Campbell brothers in Kobe and Cooper Campbell, they've been able to combine for just under 22 points per game, with Cooper Campbell, 40% three-point shooter, 4 assists per contest. Kobe shoots 39% from the outside, throws in their steal per contest as well. Troy is more of a country average team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis in comparison to last season, but they should be able to grab a lot of second and third chances in terms of percentage of their missed shots. They result in an offensive rebound. They're a top 80 team in the country, and it's a Louisiana Monroe team that just doesn't have a lot down low in terms of grabbing second chances for themselves or disallowing second chances on the other side, and I think that allows Troy to be able to help you out to the over and cover the spread. I set my line at 20. I'm going to lay with Troy, and I like the over. I set my total at a 158, 877, 878. Georgia State is going to be playing against Old Dominion. Old Dominion is a favorite here of 1 to 1.5 points. 147.5 is the total, and I'm going to be in on Georgia State on the money line. I set them as a 4.5 point favorite. Now, I recognize that Georgia State, outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're not doing much in way of giving themselves second and third chances. They rank in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound for 95th. Old Dominion's even worse at 336th, and this is an Old Dominion team that's going to allow Georgia State to have tons and tons of clean possessions, as right now for Old Dominion, they're outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Now, Old Dominion overall allows you to shoot 32.1% from 3-point range. That's a top 100 mark in the country. That goes up to 35.3% away from home, and the big issue for both of these teams on offense has actually been their 2-point shooting percentage. Old Dominion, 287th with their 2-point shooting percentage. Georgia State is even worse. Georgia State right now, they are outside the top 340 in all of college basketball. 365th, as a matter of fact, goes up past the top 365 at home, but man, not necessarily great there, but for Georgia State, their offensive numbers are a little bit warped because their top scorer in Jelani Hamilton was missing for 5 games in non-conference play. He's been able to come back, give the team 17.5 points, shoots 89% of the free throw and 35% per 3, and that's the kicker with Georgia State. They shoot nearly 79.4% of the free throw. That's a top 5 mark in the country. Old Dominion, 317th in the country in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per offensive play basis, and for Georgia State, this has been an offense that has been scoring about 71 points per game here in Sun Belt play, so they've been much better there. You've got a pair of teams that are not pushing a ton of tempo, but they're not really slow. Georgia State, about 184th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Old Dominion, they do find themselves right around about 85th, but for Caleb Swanton Roger, feels like he's taking steps back this year. He's giving you about 5 rebounds per game, but not a ton on the boards. Meanwhile, you've been able to have Casey Shaw be that top scorer, 17 points, but he shoots 9% from 3-point. Jordan Battle has been able to fight it out. Shoot 41% from 3, 14.5 points per game. And Old Dominion, country average team, they shoot about 34% from 3-point, 73% of the free throw line, so neither here nor there, but for Georgia State, this team has been a top 175 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Honestly, not a terrible defense. They do allow a lot of second and third chances, but Old Dominion not fighting for those themselves, and Georgia State has been a top 150 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Do think that Georgia State finds a way to get the job done here. I like the underside by total out of 144.5, and Georgia State on the money line made them a 4.5 point favorite. 879, 880. Illinois is going to be playing us to Michigan. Michigan does find themselves as a road favorite of 1.5 points. 157.5 is the total. Set my total at a 157. 157.5, my minimum buy point here on the under. Now you've got a Michigan team that's looking to really push tempo in terms of total possessions per game, 24th in the country. Illinois, for as efficient as they are, depending upon the day, you're looking at them as a top team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but even with the overtime games that they played, 296th in terms of total possessions per game. Take overtime out of the equation, outside the top 300 in terms of possessions per 40 minutes. Now for Illinois, just have a lot of efficiency here with Keaton Wagler, 18 points, 5 boards, shoots 42% from 3. Kylan Boswell's now back. He doesn't necessarily bomb it from 3, but he gives you 14 points, 3.5 assists per game. Illinois, a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Here's the thing, though. They are dead last in the country in terms of turnovers generated per game. They generate 7.8 turnovers per game. The way that you really take down this Michigan team is by pushing them out of sorts, into duress, and it's a Michigan team that, despite the fact that Illinois is a top 12 team with regards to rebound percentage, you've got David Modosic, who's been solid down low, 12.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. The Vesic brothers combined for about 10.7 rebounds per game. You still have had Tomislav be a little bit of a disappointment this year, but even though they're so good down low, I think that Michigan wins that battle down low because you've got a trio of guys in Morris Johnson, Yaxel Lindebor, Gade Mera, who all give you at least 6.9 rebounds per game. They combine for the three of them to give you 5.2 blocks per contest, as well as a Michigan team that is allowing you to shoot less than 30% per 3. That's a top 10 mark in the country. They allow you to shoot in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage defense in the top 5 in the country there. They're a top 5 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage as well. Now for Michigan, it's been a little bit lackadaisical over the last week or so, but I think that you're going to get a good performance out of the point guard Elliot Kadu, who's been able to give you 10 points, 5.5 assists per game. Now, it's an Illinois team that they themselves have just been so dominant in terms of not allowing clean looks. They're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're more around about 100th than opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 32.2%, but I do think that in this ordeal, it is going to be a Michigan team that, even though they're not going to get free throws, Illinois allows the fewest free throw attempts on a per possession basis on defense in the country, that they find a way with being able to win that battle down low to get the job done. I did set my line at 3, so I'm willing to lay the small number here with Michigan, and at a 157.5 minimum buy point on the under semi-total 157, 881, 882. Appalachian State is on the road against Texas State. Texas State is not doing the Texas juice up, they're doing the 1.5 step. They're a 1.5 point home underdog. Total on this game between 134.5 to 135.5, and I like Texas State on the money line. I did set them as a 3-point favorite. If this is a tight game, there's just no trusting in Appalachian State, because out of 365 teams, 364th in terms of free throw shooting percentage. They shoot less than 65% of the free throw line. That's an Appalachian State team that's been able to do a nice job executing on the inside. Top 110 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and 21st in opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's big because Texas State, they take nearly 75% of their field goal attempts from inside the 3-point line, so that does hurt them a little bit, but what helps them out is that Texas State has been sloppy with the ball. They're about 307th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. You got an Appalachian State team that they are both very slow. They're outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game, and they don't put you under duress. 341st in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Texas State has been quite good in terms of generating turnovers. 85th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on defense, and that ascends into the top 75 when they're at home. Texas State overall, relatively mid-tempo team, about 207th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Texas State, I honestly don't know why they're not taking more threes. Perhaps in this game they'll take more, because Texas State at home actually shoots 36.5% per 3-point range. That is a top 125 mark in all of college basketball. And you've had Caden Gums do a nice job shooting about 40% from 3-point range. He's been the main point guard for this team with about 9 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, and then your main 2 scorers are DJ Hall and Mark Drone. They combine for 29 points per contest. DJ Turn It Up Hall shoots 40% from 3 on very low volume. Between the two of them, you're getting about 5.2 assists per game, and they both give you over a steal per contest as well. And then on the flip side for Appalachian State, you've got 2 guys in the backcourt in Kassan Jennings, along with the Dodd father, Alonzo Dodd, who have been combining for about 29.5 points per game. And for Jennings, shoots 33% for 3, but App State really doesn't fire it up from 3. They shoot 31% from the outside. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, so they're looking to pile drive the ball down low. Well, this is an Appalachian State team that has been good in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. They're a top 100 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. You also have a Texas State team that has been pretty strong on the glass as well. Overall, they're in the top 85 with regards to rebound percentage. Texas State is allowing teams to grab only about 25% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's a top 50 mark in the country, and that's the way that Appalachian State generates a lot of their points. Appalachian State more around about 67th, and with the bad free throw shooting of Appalachian State, I think Texas State gets the job done here. So, semi-line at 3 with Texas State being the favorite, taking them on the money line. I like the under. Semi-total at a 129. 883, 884. Coastal Carolina on the road against James Madison. Our nation's fourth president, James Madison, is a 5.5 point favorite. 139.5 to 140.5 is the total. I like the over. Semi-total 142, mainly because you're going to get a bunch of clean possessions in this game. Both of these teams are outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. James Madison, a little bit of a slower team. They're about 255th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Coastal Carolina, they're a little bit more up-tempo, about 136th in terms of total possessions per game. Now, Coastal is not allowing you to get good looks on the inside. They're a top 15 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Coastal Carolina, they're neither here nor there with their 3-point shooting. They shoot 37% from 3-point range at home. That goes down to about 31.7% away from home. Meanwhile, for James Madison, solid 3-point shooting team. 73rd in the country. They shoot about 35.8% from 3-point range, but it's also a James Madison team that is just the far less efficient defense. They are about 216th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Coastal Carolina is 88th, and it is a Coastal Carolina team that's been rough with regards to their interior offense. As right now for Coastal Carolina, they are about 346th in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, so that's a little bit of an issue, but they also should be able to do a nice job in terms of owning the glass here as well. So Coastal Carolina has been pretty good in terms of not allowing a ton of second and third chances. They're 76th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage and games played away from home. That actually ascends into the top 65 in the country. And for James Madison, I thought that they would be better in terms of giving themselves second and third chances, but really neither of these teams have been great. They're outside the top 175 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound in games played at home. That falls well outside the top 225. And for James Madison, you have had a pair of guys in the backcourt that have really been able to step up in a big way, as you've been able to have Cliff Davis and Bradley Douglas both to be able to give you about 13 to 14 points per game apiece, as Douglas is actually down to 12 points per game. Davis is up to 15 points per game, but with both of these guys, they combine to shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range. Douglas, facilitator with about 3.7 assists per game. Justin McBride is that top scorer, 15.5 points, 5.5 boards. He shoots 40% from 3-point range, but it's also a group that struggles to get to the free throw line. They only shoot about 70.5% at the free throw line as well. And then for Coastal Carolina, you've got a trio of guys that have really been doing the lion's share of the scoring for this team. Joshua Beadle, 17 points, really doesn't shoot it well from 3, but 4 boards, 3 assists per game. AJ Dantzler, 15.5 points, shoots 39% from 3. He supplies 5.5 rebounds per game. And then Rashi Jones, 15 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots 38% from the outside. Coastal Carolina is a team that's not afraid to put you on the free throw line. They're a top 200 team with regards to free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, so they'll get physical with you. But with Coastal Carolina being a team that takes care of the ball the way that they do, they've been pretty solid on the glass. I do think that they find a way to be able to get the job done here, so I did semi-line at 2 with James Madison being the favorite, being able to get 5.5, taking the points with Coastal Carolina, and I like the over. Semi-total 142, 885, 886. Akron is on the road against Kent State. Kent State is a home underdog here of 3.5 to 4.5 points. So this game, 164.5 to 165.5. Like the over, a semi-total 170.5. You've got two teams that are looking to play at warp speed. Kent State, in terms of total possessions per game at home, Mambo number 5. Meanwhile, you've got Akron, currently 56th, and Akron is a top 5 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, Akron is going to give up some second and third chances. They are 207th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and it's a Kent State team that has some of the most extreme home and road splits with their outside shooting that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Kent State right now, away from home, shoots 29.8% from 3-point range. Outside the top 300 in the country, they're in the top 30 with their home 3-point shooting percentage at 39.2%. So that's interesting. And then you got Del Rocco Gillespie, give you 11 plus boards, 15 plus points per game to lead a charge down low for Kent State that has been really good in terms of generating second and third chances. They rebound 34.3% of their misses as an offensive rebound, 29th in the country. Akron also good in terms of grabbing second and third chances. In games played away from home, they grab 33% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is a top 35 mark in the country. And for Akron, you just have weapons upon weapons with this team, as if you got Tavari Johnson as your main scorer, give you 20.5 points per game, shoots 36% from 3. Armani Lyles, Shema Scott, both shoot 41.5% plus from 3-point range. With Lyles, he's your main low post presence with 7.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game, and then Scott throws in there about 3 assists per game. You've got the Mahaffey brothers, Evan Mahaffey, along with Eric Mahaffey. These two guys combined for 18 points, 11 boards. With Evan, he's giving you 1.8 steals per game. Eric shoots 42% from 3-point range, and it's a Kent State team that's not been great in terms of guarding the 3-point line this season. It's an Akron team that's either here nor there. They're going to give up a few looks from 3 as well, as Akron right now is the line teams to shoot about 36.2% from 3-point range away from home. Kent State, 37.1% is what teams shoot from 3-point range at home against them. That is well outside the top 3 in all of college basketball, and Kent State just not taking great care of the ball. They're right now 306th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Now that goes into the top 250 when they're at home, but still a massive issue there. And then you've been able to have this Akron team do a solid job in terms of generating turnovers. I'm not going to call them amazing, but it is a bunch that is in the top 100 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Kent State used to be a good team in terms of generating turnovers, not quite the same this season. And for Kent State, you should be able to get some good production out of Zion Medley, who's been able to give you about 6 assists per contest. But again, the 3+ turnovers per game, a little bit costly. You've got Morgan Stafford throwing in there 14 points, 6 boards. He shoots 35% from 3. Rob Whaley doesn't really give you 3-point shooting, but is able to toss in there about 11.5 points per game. But in the end, I do think that Akron, with how good they are on offense, they get the job done in a high-scoring expose. Semi-total at a 170.5. I like the over in Akron. I'm willing to lay with them. Set them as a 6.5-point favorite. 887, 888. South Alabama plays those to Southern Miss. Southern Miss is an underdog here of 4.5 to 5.5 points. 143.5 to 144.5 is the total, and I'm going to be in on the under. Semi-total 139.5. You've got a South Alabama team that's not looking to push a lot of tempo in terms of total possessions per game. 268th. Southern Miss about 120th in terms of total possessions per game. But here is the issue for Southern Miss. They are a bottom 10 team in the country in their 3-point shooting percentage at 27.1% away from home. And guess what South Alabama forces you to do? Take threes. In games played at home, opponents take 67.4% of their field goal attempts from 3. No other team is above 53.8%. And with Southern Miss just absolutely abysmal from 3-point range, that is not a good matchup for them. So I did set South Alabama as a 7.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Additionally, for Southern Miss, they're not taking care of the ball. About 315th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. South Alabama is a top 10 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Now, Isaac Tavares, your number 2 scorer for Southern Miss, he was missing for like 13 games. He's back, giving you 15.5 points, 2.5 steals, 6.5 rebounds per game. And to the credit of Southern Miss, they're not bad in terms of generating turnovers. Top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're getting killed from the outside. They're outside the top 265 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're not even good on the inside. They're outside the top 2 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Tylik Weeks supplies about 19 points a steal per game, but he doesn't shoot it well from 3. You've got Dejai Benoit, who's been able to give you about 11.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. And the one thing where they should be able to have some success with is grabbing second and third chances. South Alabama is well outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And for Southern Miss, they're a top 110 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Now, if you have a little bit of trepidation with South Alabama, it is the fact that, for one, they grab 16.9% of their misses as an offensive rebound at home. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. They are a bottom 30 team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage as well, but South Alabama games don't involve a lot of free throws, as they're actually a bottom 5 team in the country in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. You've had the Chaz Harris give you 19 points, doesn't really bomb it well from 3, but gives you 5 assists, stealing out per contest. Adam Olson has been versatile with 17 points, 4 boards, he shoots 40% from 3, and then the answer guys like a Randy Brady who gives you 5.5 points, 5.5 boards, a steal per contest. They've all stepped up in a big way to just really force teams to be very uncomfortable, force them to launch from 3, and with Southern Miss inability to be able to shoot it from 3, I think that South Alabama gets the job done. I'm willing to late. I set them as a 7.5-point favorite, and I'm in on the under. Subway total 139.5, 889, 890 to Louisiana is on the road against Arkansas State, and Arkansas State does find themselves as a 13 to a 13.5-point favorite. 146, so 146.5 is the total. Me, my total, a 144, so I'm going to be in on this total under. We got a Louisiana team that is playing as slow as molasses in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in a nice, cool 361st in the country. Now, Arkansas State is looking a gun at 19th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. The problem that you do have for Arkansas State here is that they've been turning the ball over a ton. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, Arkansas State is right now checking in well outside the top 320 of college basketball, 343rd. Louisiana, they've done a okay job in terms of being able to clean up their act. They're still about 213th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. That falls outside the top 235 in their games played away from home. But Louisiana has actually been able to generate a few turnovers for you. Now, I still have set my line at 16. I'm going to be fading them, but that's it for Louisiana in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, up to about 104th in all of college basketball. Where they're going to lose this battle, though, is down low. Arkansas State is a top 25 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. It's a Louisiana team that is going to be giving up quite a few second and third chances, or outside the top 170 in terms of defensive rebound percentage for Louisiana. They were planning on the Oklahoma State transfer, Jamarian Keller, to be able to headline the offense. He got injured early on during the season, so you really only have 2 go-to scorers. Ryan Finster, 14.5 points, 4.5 boards. He shoots about 37% from 3 points with a steal per contest. Jackson Oliveira supplies about 12.5 points per contest as well. And then you've had Devon Laverne be able to step up in a big way. He gives you overall for the season about 10 points, 3 assists, shoots 30% from 3. In conference play, he's been giving you about 12 points per contest, but The star freshman in Joshua Lewis going down with an injury has really hurt the depth of this team, and it's a Louisiana team that can get absolutely lambasted from three-pointers. They're outside the top 10 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they don't execute on the inside. Louisiana is a bottom 15 team in the country in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got an Arkansas State team where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as right now your top scorer is Christian Hammond. He gives you 13 points per game, and then outside of him, you've got essentially 6 different other guys that give you between 8.3 and 11.2 points per contest. That doesn't include the fact that you've got Chadi Duarama along with Royal Blue Smith, who both give you between 5 to 5.5 points per contest. Jackson Ellingsworth throws in there about 5 boards per contest. Jalen Hampton, 8.5 rebounds, a steal per contest, and you've been able to get a little bit more three-point shooting with Joey Chama back. He was missing for about 11 games, shoots 35.5% from 3 in Arkansas State. They love to go to the free throw line. They shoot 74.5% at the charity stripe, top 110 mark there, and even though Arkansas State overall for the season is outside the top 225 with their three-point shooting percentage at 33.3%, that's elevated here in Sunbelt play to 34.7%, and I do think that allows them to get the job done here. So I made my total a 144. I like the under end with Arkansas State. I'm willing to lay up to 15.5 with them and wrap things up with 891, 892. Marshall is going to be playing us to Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is a underdog here of 7.5 to 7 points. Totals between 168.5 to 169, and I like the under. I set my total 164. Now, Georgia Southern is absolutely looking to fly 21st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Marshall not shy to run either, 89th in terms of total possessions per game. Marshall has been really feasting on getting second and third chances, and really their interior play as they're a top 100 team with their two-point shooting percentage 119th with regards to percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but having 7'4" Matthew Van Coleman out of the fold, who's been shooting over 73% from the floor. He gives you 8+ rebounds, 2.5 blocks per game. That's caused them to change things around a little bit. Now, Marshall shoots really well from three-point range at home, 39.4% from three-point range at home. That is a top 45 mark in the country. And Georgia Southern, not necessarily a great three-point shooting team, even with having Spud Webb along with Tyron Moore combining for about 28 points per game. They only shoot about 31.4% from three-point range at 305th in the country. To the credit of Georgia Southern, they've done a great job in terms of winning the turnover battle. Top 55 team. There's a few turnovers on a per possession basis on offense and on defense. They're just a hair inside the top 100 with regards to turnovers generated, 84th in the country. It's a Marshall team that they've been country average 199th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But for Marshall, even though they do have the Van Coleman injury, I still do think that they're going to be able to win this game and cover it because you've got a trio of guys that give between 14 and 16 points per game with Jalen spearheading things, 16 points, 5.5 assists, shoots 37% for 3. Wyatt Fricks, 15 points, 5.5 boards. He throws in there about 35% three-point shooting, and then Noah Ashudi has been able to give you 14 points, 3.5 assists per contest as well. Marshall, they're back inside the top 200 in terms of ball security. They were really turning the ball over to begin the season, so that helps out. And it is a Marshall team that's going to give up a lot of second and third chances. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. Yeah, Georgia Southern team is right there as well, but for Georgia Southern, they really don't give themselves a lot of second and third chances. Outside the top 225 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, you've been able to have Alden Applewhite throwing there about 6 boards, 13 points per game, but he's a lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. And for Georgia Southern, they're outside the top 175 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and with their woes in terms of being able to pop it from 3, and they'll put you on the free throw line. They're a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per game basis, and Marshall does shoot about 73.9% on the free throw line. I think Marshall does just enough to be able to get the job done here. Set Marshall is an 8-point favorite. I'm willing to lay the 7 to 7.5, and I like the under. So I total 164, and that wraps things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops. I'm part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And a big thanks once again to Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in the live segment, coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.